Okay, guys, so let's start. Uh, so last time we have seen the construction of the LL1 parsing table, which we can also call by the name of predictive parsing table. And we also see the process of parsing with this simplest form of the grammar. I mean, the set which highlights the set of balanced parentheses here. So we saw this scenario, I mean, up till the last point where we stopped. So we saw that, the parse table is going to facilitate the process of the parsing in a predictive way. And here, the form of the grammar again must be very important. So it should not be left recursive, it should be completely left factored, and obviously, it should not be ambiguous. And then predictive parser says, now I can do the parsing in a unique way. I can take certain decisions in a unique way. Like if my top of the stack is containing the symbol S, that is non-terminal, and my lookahead pointer is pointing to this symbol, let's say open parenthesis. So I have to do this unique thing. And what does this unique thing means? That simply pop the stack symbol, which is at the top of the stack, and replace it with the right hand side of the production here. And how we fill these entries, because if we compute the first of S, so the first of set is including the open parenthesis and epsilon. And since obviously in input stream, we do not have the epsilon, so we have to take the follow of S here. So whatever the follow of S will come, we'll write the S derives epsilon production underneath here. And the reason, which I have already explained you with the help of certain examples last time. And then we utilized this table uh, for parsing. I mean, for any input, like we took this input and we showed that how is parsing is going to be done here. So we have to look at the stack configuration, we have to look at the input stream configuration, and subsequently we have to take the decisions here. Fine. So this is the first, simpler example in which we have just understood the logistics of this parsing here, the construction of the parsed, this table and the process of the parsing. Now let's try to look at some of the formal algorithms one has to remember. Now we are just going to recapture the things which we have done last time. So designing of the parse table. Sorry. So first, at the very first place for doing the LL1 parsing, one should know how to construct the parse table here. And as I said, we are going to capture the same thing which we have highlighted with the help of this example here. So it says that the construction of the parse table will do like this, that for each of these production of your grammar of this form, in type 2 form, that is A is deriving alpha, where alpha could be any string of terminals or non-terminals. So I have to do this set of activities here. So as a first step, we say that if first of alpha, that means the first of right hand side, is giving me certain tokens or terminals, then immediately my entry towards, I'll say that this two-dimensional array M corresponding to this stack symbol A and this particular token here will simply do this production here. That is, this is the unique action which is going to be performed here. Right. So this is what exactly we are mentioning here. If my first of right hand side is giving me that token, so I'll place that production under this entry here. Fine. The first thing. What other thing? So other things I say that, let's say if epsilon is coming in the first of alpha. Fine. So if epsilon, I'm sorry, someone has thrown some message on the chat box. Can someone highlight that for myself? What is the issue?
Sir, someone is saying that your voice is glitchy, but no, it is fine for others. So.
All right, so I request that person to please check your connection if you are acknowledging that there is no problem from my side. And then again, let me know if this problem still persists. So if epsilon is in first of alpha, so we know that epsilon doesn't come in our input stream, which we are supposed to tokenize. So we know what exactly we are supposed to do. We'll say that we'll, do this corresponding to this symbol if and only if my the follow of A is equal to this symbol, that is the terminal B symbol. I mean, we are assuming so that follow of A is B here. So I'll write the corresponding production A is deriving epsilon or A is deriving alpha under this particular terminal symbol B here. And this is what exactly we did in the last problem here. And the last, which is almost similar to this one again. So if straightforward, we have this, if epsilon is in first of alpha and dollar is in follow of A, I mean, the start symbol of the grammar. So again, I'll say that the entry corresponding to this two-dimensional array, the parse table, corresponding to this non-terminal A and the dollar symbol would be the same production. So this is just, we have captured that what are the steps while construction of the parse table here for each one, for every production of your grammar here. Fine, guys. Any question, any comment up to this point? So this is just the construction. Now the big guy is still pending. We have to see that, okay, the table has been constructed, but we have to do the actual parsing, which we have seen last time with the help of some example. So let's try to recapture that thing with the help of an algorithm of the LL1 parsing or the predictive parsing here. So the same steps, guys, we have did last time. So first of all, it says that assume that your LL1 parser assumes the X symbol on the top of the stack and A, the current input symbol here. This X could be dollar, this X could be any non-terminal symbol of the grammar, or this A could be any token in your tokenized stream of the input here. Fine. I mean, this is the initial configuration at the top of the stack and at the current lookout symbol, that is A here. So parser says that I have to look both these guys and then I'll take the action, right? So LL1 predicting, LL1 parsing is saying like this. So it says, consider the dollar is a special token which is supposed to be at the bottom of the stack and also terminates the input string. So recall, which we did last time. So we said dollar will be here also and dollar will be also in the last of our input stream here, which indicates that parsing is done. It stopped. Fine. Next, now we are going to compare certain things. So we'll say if my top of the stack, that is X, is equivalent to the current lookout symbol, that is A, is equivalent to dollar symbol, then immediately the parsing should get stopped. Just try to recall the last example. So when we reach here up to this point, we said, okay, stop. We do not even need to pop these symbols. So these are the flags that parsing needs to be stopped at this point here. Fine. What are the other possibilities? So we'll say that if my X is equivalent to A is not equal to dollar, that means any other token, any other terminal symbol, then in that case, what we were doing last time, we'll immediately pop that symbol X. So here X is a terminal symbol on the stack, or a token. So because match operation has happened, let's assume. So let's suppose my current lookout pointer is A. I mean, this is pointing somewhere here, and my top of the stack is this. And obviously it is not equal to dollar. Then I'll pop this. That means, what does it indicate? That match has happened. And I should increment my lookout pointer, let's say, to the next input symbol. Seems valid. Fine. And what are the other possibilities? We haven't played yet with any non-terminal symbol. So it says that let's suppose now my X is a non-terminal symbol. That means my top of the stack is including some non-terminal symbol. Fine. So in that case, I'll say that my parse table entry, I mean this m of x comma a, I mean a is your current look ahead pointer. If this is the entry which is including here, that x is deriving some right hand side of the production PQR, then I'll simply let's say like this, I'll simply pop this guy and I'll push the right hand side production of this grammar on my top of the stack, or on the stack here, keeping the leftmost symbol on the top of the stack here. So I'll write here RQP. So the topmost symbol should be the left-handmost symbol of the right-hand side of the grammar. So that's why we said pop the X, that means this symbol on the top of the stack, and push this reverse order in a reverse order, that is RQP. And finally, I should keep on going this. Otherwise, if this is a non-terminal, that means that it is a syntactical error, right? So, I mean, consider that we have the top of the symbol is X and the look ahead pointer is pointing to B, sorry. And we do not have any entry corresponding to this, on our parse table. So it simply says this is an error here. Fine, students, any question, anything which you want to discuss at this point of time? So this is the complete process of the parsing, which we have captured last time with the help of an example. And now this is the underlying algorithm. No changes. I mean, exactly the same procedure which we did last time. It's simply the mirror image of this. Fine. So now we'll take some more complex examples so that things would be very much clear what exactly this guy is doing with respect to the error entries also. So we pick this grammar, which is nothing but a grammar of identifiers followed by, including this addition and multiplication and the balance parenthesis here. Fine. And we are assuming that this form of the grammar is fine. That means no left recursion, completely left factored, and most importantly, it is unambiguous. And I'm ready to do the parsing with the help of LL1 parsing here. Fine, guys. So the first step, we should know, the calculation, we should compute the set of follow sets and the first set for all the terminals and the non-terminal symbols here. So, as of now, I must say that this is the complete configuration with respect to the first set and the follow set. And we have already discussed so much on this. Now you should verify on your own. Let me tell you a simple thing. So first of E is nothing but first of TE dash. And first of TE prime is first of T. And first of T is again first of FT prime. And first of FT prime is again first of F. And first of F is nothing but first of ID and first of open parenthesis. So I got the two tokens here, that is the ID and the open parenthesis here. Fine. Similarly, you can calculate on your own. This is nothing which we have already discussed. Now the big guy that we have to construct the parse table. So the parse table, as I said, it's a two-dimensional array. On one hand, we have to jot down all the non-terminal symbols of the grammar, including the start symbol. And on this side, we have to highlight all the possible tokens or all the possible terminals, including this guy, that is the dollar, which is the, simply indicates the end of the inputs, tokenized input stream here. So as a part of first step, what we did, we need to fill the entries corresponding to this non-terminal of the grammar, that is E here. So we just saw that what is first of E. So first of E is available to us, that is ID and this here. That means the first set of tokens which are derivable from the right-hand side here is, that is ID and open parentheses. And we immediately mention, consider this is the bifurcation. Under ID here, corresponding to this stack symbol E, this is the thing here. And similarly, with respect to the open parenthesis, we did this. So that means, what does it mean? That at any point of time, my stack configuration, the top of the stack is E, and any of these symbols is either ID or open parenthesis, then I have to do this unique action. And you know what exactly this unique action is. Pop this symbol, top of the stack, and push these symbols, keeping the leftmost on the top of the stack here. Similarly for this. Fine. And what does this indicate? That let's suppose if my top of the stack is E and my input stream is, let's say, pointing to the look at pointed plus, then immediately I should say this is an error here. Syntactical. I'm not expecting this. Similarly for others as well. Fine, guys. Now I'll go for this one. So here we have two right-hand sides. We have two productions. One is plus t e prime, and another one is epsilon. And we know how to handle the cases of epsilon here, right? So for this, so it simply indicates that the first of e prime is nothing but first of plus t e prime, which indicates that first of plus t e prime is nothing but first of plus, and first of plus is simply plus here. Fine. And also epsilon, but we do not have epsilon in our input stream, right? So right now we'll simply mention that e prime under this plus is deriving plus t e prime here. And we have another production which says e prime is also deriving epsilon. So what does it mean here? So it means, at the starting point, we have to calculate now follow of e dash here. Why? Because we have already explained this. Let's say, suppose, somewhere at the, when we are deriving this particular string, let's say, thing which is coming like this, let's say, something like this. Suppose if I'll remove also this guy here, and this is my last of this thing here. Let me rub this so that I can rewrite this. Yeah, so suppose if at the process of derivation, my configuration of the input and the stack is something like this. The complete configuration of my input stream here, derivation here. So I want that, currently my pointer is here. So I want that I should vanish this symbol, because I need this, the accurate parenthesis here, let's say this thing here, or the close parenthesis. So parser needs to build sufficient intelligence that how will I vanish this symbol? Because I have the production e derives epsilon, sorry, e prime derives epsilon here. Only because follow of e dash if it is containing any of the symbols which is actually following of e dash here. So follow of e dash, you can see, is nothing but one of the symbol which is saying the close parenthesis. So on this basis, I'll simply vanish this. So whenever I am supposed to vanish this non-terminal, so I should see what exactly is the symbol which is following this non-terminal. And is it that symbol which is coming in the follow set of the e prime? That's why we always compute the follow of, in such cases, whenever these guys are driving epsilon here. Fine, guys?
So, excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, we will not have e prime in the input stream, right?
Right. So as I said, so this is a process of the derivation, right now.
Okay, sir. Fine.
This is a derivation. And what I will tell you, at any point of time, you will, if you will concatenate the configuration, the contents of the stack with the contents of the input stream, right? This will completely become one configuration. Fine?
Okay, sir. Got it.
So we have to concatenate both these things. So that's what you can either call it as a configuration of the stack as well as input stream, or you can also call it as a complete sentential form of the derivation process. Similarly, I'll go for others, guys. So, I mean, now I need not to repeat the same procedure. So I'll compute T of Ft dash. So I have to compute the first of Ft dash. And these are the two guys here. Others are error entries here. And obviously it is not deriving epsilon. Similarly for this as well. So we kept T prime derives epsilon under the follow set of these symbols here. And finally, for this thing here. And other entries are simply, we do not need to keep it as, empty. These are error entries. So whenever my top of the stack is containing these non-terminals and this as a lookahead pointer, which I have indicated the error entries, so I should simply flag an error. And most importantly, which we are going to discuss in the upcoming sessions, how to recover from the errors. Because immediately we should not stop here and say, okay, now I'm not going to parse my rest of the code. I will definitely parse my rest of the code. But right now, I'll flag an error. Fine, students, up to this point, any question, anything? Fine. So now let's look at one more way of parsing here. So this time I have formalized the things in some tabular format. So this is the configuration of our parsing table right now. And we are going to use this parsing table for our complete parsing here. As we know, the initial configuration of my stack is $, and initial configuration of my input stream is ID plus ID $, which I'm supposed to parse. And the first action I'm going to take by default, that I will push the symbol, the start symbol of my grammar, that is E here. So I push that symbol on the stack here, fine, at the first point. And my lookahead pointer is still pointing to the ID here, first ID. Now, what should I do? So configuration is the top of the stack is E and the lookahead pointer is ID. So we know what exactly needs to be done. So E on ID, as you can see here, is nothing but E derives this TE prime here. Fine, guys. So now what I exactly did, so I have to perform these operations. First, let me pop this E and I'll replace it with the right-hand side of the grammar in reverse order, keeping the leftmost symbol on the top of the stack. And this is what exactly we did, E prime and T. And again, my lookahead pointer is pointing to the ID. So T on ID, let me go back to the table. So T on ID is doing T derives FT prime here. So what should I do? I should simply pop the T and replace it with the right-hand side here, keeping the leftmost symbol on the top of the stack. And that's where we exactly did here. T prime and F here. Now, F on ID, again, I'll do this. F on ID is simply doing this. So that means pop the F and push the right-hand side, which is nothing but ID here. So that's where we exactly did this thing here, ID. And my lookahead pointer is still pointing to the first symbol, that is ID. Now, ID on ID, that is simply match. Remember the second condition of the parsing algorithm. So that means I have to first pop the ID from the stack, and I have to increment my lookahead pointer. So I am writing in short ILP, that is increment the lookahead pointer plus plus. So next time my configuration of the stack is no ID, that is E prime T prime, and my input stream, my lookahead pointer is pointing to the plus. So don't consider here that I have popped my lookahead symbol. This is just that this is the rest of the input which I am supposed to parse, and my current lookahead pointer is pointing to the plus here. Fine. And now the configuration is that T prime on plus. So you can see T prime on plus is nothing but T prime is deriving epsilon. So that means I have to simply pop the T prime from the top of the stack. And this is now my rest of the configuration, that is $E prime, and plus ID $ will remain the same here. And again, E prime on plus, we have this thing plus TE prime. So again, push this configuration. So similarly, you will keep on repeating this thing as per the configuration of the parsing table here. And once we reach here, so we'll say our parsing is done, completed successfully. Fine, students, any question, any suggestion, anything which you want to discuss up to this point? Fine. So two things, guys. One is construction of the parse table, and the another is the process of the parsing here. That one needs to remember. Fine. Now, as I said in the last session, that generally, I mean, or more frequently, the form of the grammar which is taken by such forms of the parser is generally called as LL1 grammar. Fine, because the parser has sufficient capabilities to parse the language given by the corresponding grammar, and we are calling that LL1 grammar. I mean, the first L that scanning the input from left to right, and the second says leftmost derivation, and we are always taking the decision by only looking at one lookahead symbol. Fine. And things can be achieved by looking at one lookahead symbol as of now. So now we need to understand what exactly is my LL1 grammar here. Come on, guys. I need certain responses from your side because we have successfully constructed the parse table and we have done the parsing as well. And we are calling such form of the grammar as LL1. So why it is LL1? Come on, guys, one by one.
We only need to look ahead one symbol in the input string to decide the rule.
That's fine. I mean, this is fine, but what are the properties of it? I mean, on what terms and conditions I will call any type 2 grammar or CFG as LL1?
There is no left recursion and it is left factored.
Fine. So no left recursion should be there in that current form of the grammar, and the grammar should be completely left factored. Only two properties, no other properties?
So unambiguous.
Yes, the important thing, guys, here, that it has to be unambiguous. Remember, it is quite possible that your grammar is non-left recursive and yet left factored as well, but still it is ambiguous. So it's our responsibility to, before parsing, we should correct the form of the grammar and then do the LL1 parsing here. Remember this thing. Fine. So these are the properties which one has to remember here. Non-left recursive, left factored, and most importantly, guys, it should be unambiguous. Fine. So from here onwards, you can imagine, we'll see, is there any automated way to define or to estimate whether my grammar is ambiguous, oh sorry, LL1 or not? We have certain procedures, right? So let's see now. So conditions for a grammar to be LL1. Fine. So there are n number of ways in which we can do these things. So one by one. So it says that if you are constructing a parse table for every non-terminal, if every lookahead symbol can be handled by at most one production. That means either one production or simply no production. Makes sense? I mean, so if I go back, so either I am doing this parsing with one production or simply no production. That is error. Fine. So at a certain point of time, if under one single entry, I am getting some second production also. That means here is an ambiguity. Parser doesn't know whether I should pop this symbol and push this right-hand side or the next right-hand side. Right? So if your parse table is including the unique productions across all the entries, then it is one flag or it is one sign that your grammar is LL1. Fine. So here, I mean, what we have mentioned here, that every lookahead symbol by your parser should be handled by at most one production. And if there are multiple productions, then grammar must not be LL1. That means it is ambiguous. Fine, it have multiple and it is showing you the multiple representations. I mean, the parser is not very sure. Either I should push this right-hand side or push the next one right-hand side, right? So a grammar whose parse table has multiple defined entries, or a grammar whose parse table has no multiple defined entries has to be LL1 grammar. Blindly. Oh, come on. You can say it is LL1. It is unambiguous, it is left factored, and it is non-left recursive. Fine. This is one way. I mean, one can think of any grammar to be finding whether it is LL1 or not. Other way out is, suppose if in your grammar you have the productions of this form. I mean, that obviously the type 2 grammar where A is single non-terminal and alpha, these different alphas could be any string of terminals and non-terminals here. Fine. So in this case, I mean, one has to compute this guy, which I have already stated you long time back. That if first of alpha 1, first of alpha 2, and first of alpha 3, up to first of alpha 1 do not have any common entries, do not have any common first set of token symbols. That means that everything is going fine. And that makes sense. That means parser has different set of first tokens here, parser has different set of tokens here, and here as well as so on. So it can take the unique actions here corresponding to the entries in the parse table here. Fine. So I'll say that this is LL1 here. Or because there could be some another productions of the form, if your grammar is taking the productions of the form this. I mean, till now we are not assuming that all these are deriving epsilon. So let's suppose now we have one alpha, which is any again string of terminals and non-terminals, and we have epsilon as well. So what should I do? Because first of alpha would definitely give me first token, but first of epsilon will give me the epsilon, and unfortunately I do not have epsilon in my input stream. So what should I do? So as of now, we know in that case we have to simply vanish this symbol only if follow of A is including the next symbol in the input stream here. So that means that first of alpha intersection follow of alpha should again not include any common symbols here. Otherwise, this is going to conflict. Let's suppose the first of alpha is also coming A and follow of A is also coming A. That means both these entries, A derives alpha and A derives epsilon, will come under the, let's say, entry A here, corresponding to this non-terminal here. Fine, guys. So this is one way. This is one another way in which one can, I mean, if one has to restrict himself or herself from the construction of the LL1 parse table, so this is the way out. And this is generally most easiest way or quick way to find out manually, I mean, my grammar is LL1 or not. And the other way out, which I have already mentioned, that if your parse table is containing multiple defined entries for the same production in the same cell, like I gave you this example, then obviously I cannot say my grammar is LL1 here. Fine, guys. Any question up to this point again?
Sir, one doubt. Sir, in like here we are writing first of alpha 1 intersection first of alpha 2 and so on up till first of alpha and intersection is phi. Sir, here shouldn't the condition be that pair-wise intersection should be phi? Like means in this.
Okay, so you are saying here instead of doing it one go, I should do it in pairs.
Yes, sir.
So
because
my rebuttal to this question is that is it going to make a difference? Because my goal is right now, if I'll find at least one common entry, I'll immediately raise a flag and I'll say it is not LL1. Fine?
Sir, but like it is possible now that
it is possible. What you are saying is not, I'm not denying that is incorrect, but what I'm saying, which is also correct. So we can take pairwise permutation and combinations, but what exactly we are doing in pair? We are just achieving whether it is LL1 or not. We are finding whether the common set of tokens by derived from any of these category or not.
Okay, sir. Got it. Fine.
Got it or still confused?
Like, sir.
It's still confused, seems.
Yes. Sir,
So what is the confusion? Can you put some more light on it?
Sir, like, because if it is possible that alpha 1 and alpha 2 have something common in their first set,
Correct.
but alpha n does not have that thing. So
Fine.
the complete intersection will be phi, but alpha 1 and alpha 2 have something common. So when so the parser will be confused if that common thing comes up in the input stream.
So as you are saying here, the common thing will come, right?
Yes, sir.
So my question is right now, my goal is what right now? My goal is to just identify whether it is LL1 or not. So parser says doesn't matter, the rest of the things does not have any common symbols. I'm not going to accept this grammar, right, for parsing. Give me the correct form of the grammar. This is our goal.
Yes, sir.
Are you understanding? Our goal is what? Our goal is to produce the correct form of the grammar. Or either I should not give the grammar to the parser. So I need this flag.
Okay, sir. Got it.
Sir, in the case Shivam pointed out, like
Right.
the grammar would be left recursive then.
Grammar, it is in this, so grammar would not be left recursive. Possibly they are deriving, it is left, it is not left factored. Because they are, their first set of the tokens are similar. Let's say this is the form. Something like this.
Yes, sir. I mean left factor.
Yes, yes. So what is your question now?
Okay, sir. Got it. Got it. Yeah. Fine. Fine, sir.
Let us take some examples so that things would be very much clear to all of you. So suppose, I mean, any random grammar, generalized form of the grammar. Suppose this is the grammar. Or find out whether it is LL1 or not, based on the thing which we have discussed till now. Any voices, guys, up to this point? LL1 or not? Come on, guys. This problem should not take too much time.
Yes, sir. It is LL.
It is
LL1.
LL1. Fine. So I hope all you people are not, started constructing the parse table because it doesn't require so very small grammar and I can easily find out by the second rule here. So obviously the rule does not apply here on this form of the production because it is giving you the unique production, right? And there are no other productions which are starting with the S here. So I'm not going to apply the rule on this. So I'll apply the rule on the rest form of the grammar. So this is my alpha 1 and this is my epsilon here. So I'll say first of C is obviously C, but A derives epsilon. So that means I have to compute the follow of A here. And follow of A is nothing but first of, let me write in short, first of BB. And first of BB means first of B. And first of B is D minus epsilon. And obviously the next guy is computing B. So this will give me this here. And this is obviously not coinciding with this. So this is simply equal to phi here. Similarly for this as well, follow of B. So follow of B is nothing but first of B. So D and B obviously this. So I'll say, I mean, this is the picture. That this is LL1. This is LL1. That means this has, is my process of finding whether it is ambiguous or unambiguous. Fine. Let us take more examples. This time I'm insisting, try to construct the parse table so that you can also visualize what exactly thing is happening here. So guys, LL1 or not? No answers yet, guys. I'm waiting. Any response?
Not LL1, sir.
Not LL1. I mean, even I do not know the rules. This grammar is very short. I simply can say because of these two guys on the right hand side, I could have multiple interpretations of the grammar. I mean, the same string. Right. So this is ambiguous grammar for me right now. So, but still, let me apply the rules in the form of a table, and I'll say first of this right hand side is A, and first of this right hand side is B. That's why we have written these two entries under this set here. But this guy, unfortunately, it is also deriving epsilon. So that means follow of S, and follow of start symbol we know. Sorry, follow of start symbol is nothing but dollar. And obviously, this is also present here. So follow of S is nothing but first of BS. And first of BS is first of B. And first of B is simply B. Similarly, follow of this S is again follow of this S, which we have already computed. Right? Now I'll come to this S. So follow of S is nothing but first of AS. First of AS is first of A. And first of AS is first of A, which is nothing but A here. Fine, and again, this guy is going to put the recursive thing here. So follow of S, which we have already computed. So that means we have to write S derives epsilon under all these things. So this is completely ambiguous grammar, which I will say this is not LL1. I mean, parser will get confused that, I mean, when my top of the stack is S and my lookahead pointer is pointing to the A, whether I should vanish this symbol or I should simply, completely vanish the symbol, or simply by on vanishing, I'll push this configuration on the right hand side on the top on the stack here. So multiple interpretations, right? Like we said, we should have unambiguous representation. Yeah. Similarly, we have these forms of the grammar, guys. So just find out whether this is LL1 or not. I mean, I leave it as an exercise for you. So now this is the whole thing which we have to understood as a part of the LL1 parsing, the predictive parsing. So you can see the name is itself indicating the meaning. It is uniquely predicting the actions, right? Considering that form of the grammar should be correct. Fine. And we must know whether our form of the grammar is correct or not. So these are some of the ways in which one can find out whether it is LL1 or not here. If it is not LL1, make it LL1 compatible. Understand the ambiguity and resolve the ambiguity, and then do the parsing. Then construct the parse table. So error recovery now. So because we have hit the errors recently, but our goal is, let's suppose I have written a very long code. I mean, let's say this is my line numbers. And suppose there is some syntactical error in the first line. So my parser should be very efficient enough that it say, okay, if I have found a syntactical error in this line, that's okay, I'll flag an error. But let me do the rest of the parsing. Right, let me parse the rest of the tokenized input stream, because my goal is to do the rest of the input. My goal is not to just flag an error. Similarly, in the rest of the parsing, if I'll flag somewhere error here, so I'll say, okay, I'll simply flag an error, but I'll come out the error also. I'll come out of the recovery. So I'll say, I'll resume my parsing from some other point here. So this is where we are jumping into the error recovery part, guys, for the LL1 parsing here. Fine. So I hope this part is clear, that what exactly is error recovery right now. Let us take some more examples. So error recovery says, first of all, that you have to stop immediately as soon as your parser is hitting first error. or as soon as your parsing is, simply flagging one error corresponding to the entry in the parse table, right? So it says that your compiler should recover from the errors and identify as many errors as possible. Fine. It should not simply come out, okay, oh, this is the error, now I'm not going to do the rest of the parsing. No, this is some sort of your compiler is adamant. So compiler need not to be adamant. Compiler should say, okay, fine, I have flagged an error. Let me parse the rest of the input, and in the process of the rest of the parsing, I may hit some more errors, right? So it says that there is one very interesting technique which in the recent state of art, it is known by the name of panic mode. So panic mode is the most frequently used error recovery technique. Although there are some other techniques obviously in the recent literature, but panic mode is very easy to understand and it's very easy to implement with respect to the LL1 parsing here. So let us try to understand this. Now, what exactly is going to be recovered from this, technique here? So it says that whenever you encountered an error anywhere in the statement, right? So it says completely ignore the rest of the statement by not processing, by not parsing the input from the erroneous input to the delimiters. So this mode is going to prevent the parser for developing infinite loops and is considered as the easiest way for recovery of the errors. Now, what does it mean? It means, let's suppose I'm writing certain lines here. Let's suppose this is my one line, and another line is something like this: P, Q plus R, and again, let's say semicolon. And then again, we have something more lines, let's say Q times S here, semicolon, and so on and so forth. Now, as of now, we have taken the conventional rule. So we'll say this parser will simply parse this line successfully. Now, when it will come to the next line, he'll say simply, I may be expecting certain thing in between these two guys. So this is the error here right now, assuming. So it will simply flag an error here, and it will say, now I have to recover from the error so that I can parse the rest of the input stream here. So what will it do exactly here? It will say that I'll ignore the rest of the input stream, that I'm not going to parse the rest of the input stream till I will hit any delimiter. Delimiter may come in the form of a end of the statement, let's say semicolon, or any other delimiter, like let's say white space, tab symbols, and whatnot. Whatever the language specifications are saying, these are my delimiters. So it says, as soon as I hit a delimiter, that means I have reached the end of certain statements here. And now, from the next statement, I should resume my parsing. Hope this is now understood. So panic mode says like this. The informal example in front of you. So ignore the rest of the input until you hit any delimiter and start the parsing from the next point. Resume the parsing from the next current symbol here. And again, you can resume your parsing and again do the same thing. If you will hit some other syntactical error, ignore the rest of the input up to that point and then continue the parsing from the next set till you hit any delimiter here. So this is the thing which I was explaining to you. So second statement has some syntactical error here. Let's assume the grammar rule has been written in this way that on the right-hand side of an assignment operator, there should be always an expression. However, it is not. So this is a syntactical error. So it says, okay, I'll ignore the input up to this point, fine, and I'll resume the parsing from this point. So panic mode recovery will skip all the tokens till this semicolon and try to parse the next expression. And most importantly, guys, it is quite possible, which I have mentioned in the last line, it may also fail because it is quite possible that parser has not detected any delimiter. That means you are reached at the end of something. So in that case, your parsing is failed, right? So it may also fail if no further delimiter or anything which is supposed to be detected in the form of a end of the statement here. So now let's try to visualize this delimiters in the form of whatever we have discussed as with respect to the parse table here. Fine. So it says error detection happens when an entry in a parse table is found, return error here. That is, I mean, corresponding to this two-dimensional array is generally reporting an error here. Now, just focus on these lines here. It says, keep discarding the tokens until you hit any token which comes in the first set of any non-terminal of the grammar that is placed on the top of the stack and resume the parsing from that token. Try to visualize that this is your configuration of the stack, let's say, assuming any non-terminal on the top of the stack. And suppose if you have hit any symbol which is indicating an error entry here. Let's say this is a multiplication symbol here. And suppose you have some more variables after this and so on. And suppose in this is where you hit any delimiter or anything. Let's suppose not semicolon, let me write here CH itself. And now I'll say that first of P is equivalent to C here. Right. So this is the point where it says, now I'll keep discarding the tokens until I will find any symbol which comes in the first of the non-terminal which is on the top of the stack. Because that is the next exact location from where the parsing should start here. Seems valid point, guys? It is fine, right? I mean, it makes sense because I mean, usually we do this. I mean, as long as we are dealing with the productions like this. But what about the epsilon productions? I mean, like this. So for that, we have one more rule. It says, now you have to modify your parse table. So it says that place the symbols in the follow of A. Let me consider it as a here. Place the symbols in the follow of A in sync set in your parse table. And skip the tokens until an element in follow of A is seen. Pop the A and continue the parsing from that token. Right. So what exactly is saying, suppose we have a production of this form, A is deriving epsilon. So that means I have to resume the parsing when this whole derivation gets finished. So what exactly is follow of A, which is the point from where I have to start the parsing here. Right. So it says, keep on discarding the tokens until you hit any symbol which is coming in the follow of A here. Discard that non-terminal and resume the parsing from that point, from the below configuration of the stack and the current lookahead pointer here. Fine. So till now, our configuration with respect to the same example is something like this: error entries here. Now the revised parse table is saying that place the sync symbol, I mean these sync symbols under this follow of set here, follow of symbols. Follow of E is this, follow of E is also this particular symbol. So similarly this. So what does this indicate? That this indicates that I have to ignore these symbols as long as I can hit any symbol which is coming in the follow of it. So two strategies, guys, we have. One is this and the another one is this for error recovery. Guys, so let me give you one quick example so that you can able to visualize here. So suppose if this is the input stream which we are supposed to parse and which exactly is syntactically incorrect, ID plus star ID. So you can see as per up to ID plus I can parse exactly what I did earlier, right? I mean, let's suppose we have reached up to this point plus and we are doing, I mean, so plus is matched. So we'll pop plus and increment the lookahead pointer. And on incrementing the lookahead pointer, you see my this thing is occurred here, that is star. So T on star, just look at here. T on star is simply an error here, right? So what should I do? I'll discard the input symbol star fine, till I'll hit any entry which is coming either in follow of A or in first of A. So I have discard the input symbol star, fine. So next time my configuration is T and ID, and T on ID you can see here is coming in the first of this. So I'll just do the same thing here. So that means that I have found the next thing which is coming under the first of T and so on, and next it is coming under the F of this. So this is how one has to recover from the error here. Any question, guys? So I'm stopping here, guys, today. Any questions with respect to this point, whichever we have discussed?
Sir, what is the use of writing sin, sir, in the parse table?
So, I mean, this is not that example which is covering so suppose if I would have encountered such symbols, let's say such, and again, let's say dollar, and then again let's not assume the dollar. So in that case, so T on, let's say this open brace, closing brace, this is sync here, right? So sync means again, keep on discarding that. So I have to stop at this point and I'll resume the parsing from the next point here. So here I have intentionally taken one symbol. This could have multiple symbols also.
Sir, so it is just to identify which error recovery rule we will be using.
Right. Which error recovery rule we are using, right?
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So just remember here, I mean, you have to remember these rules. Either I go for first or follow, because I have the productions of both forms, right? Like this or like this. So this will apply to the first and this will apply to the follow. So sorry, this will apply to the follow and this will apply for the first set. So it says, let me consume full this, and whatever is follow of A, I'll pop this and I'll resume the parsing from that point. And with respect to the start, let me reach to the first set symbol which is coming to the here. I'll ignore all the rest of the input and I'll resume the parsing from the next point. Fine, guys. So I have uploaded, guys, few practice problems with respect to the LL1 grammar. Please find this practice problems on Nalanda. I have recently uploaded. So whatever we have discussed with respect to the parsing, I have uploaded few problems on that. Yes, now if anyone wants to discuss any question with respect to this, I am ready to take.
Sir, here, if we find an error, we will continue later after skipping after the delimiter. Isn't it an inefficient way? Because, okay, like compiler will not be able to do it right now, but I mean, we have to do the same parsing again.
Why we have to do the same parsing again?
Sir, like suppose that user has corrected the error.
Fine.
Then then the parse tree for y is also to be constructed again.
So let us try to understand this line which you just said, that user has corrected his test case, right? This is what you are saying? Input?
Yes, sir.
So that means I'll invoke my parser capabilities to the completely new test case and the new thing which again will occur in a different way. So where inefficiency is coming into picture?
So inefficiency is there because so okay, we have in the previous attempt we have already passed y is equal to z by 2.
Fine.
Which will not be anyway useful for us because there was some problem.
Why it is not useful?
Sir, because there is error in the second line.
So what is the issue there? Because my goal is to parse the rest of the input, whether it is syntactically correct or not. Why it is inefficient? Why it is unuseful? That's the thing I'm not understanding right now.
So
And
like
suppose you people usually submit the code to your compiler. So it indicates different syntactical errors, different logical errors. Does it simply hang, right? Or does it go into the infinite loop? So in order to avoid the compiler into go in infinite loop or showing completely failure, we are doing this process, which I'm not understanding why you are calling it as an inefficient. Because compiler is saying that, okay, this input is syntactically incorrect. Let me resume the parsing for the rest of the test case. But I need certain flag from where I should be able to do the correct parsing. So that's where the rules of the first and the follow set is coming into picture. Please make me understand if I am not understanding anything.
Yeah, fine, sir. Like
Why-
someone wrote on the chat that it will help detect further errors. That's
Right.
yes,
Right.
sir. That's a
It will help in detecting further more errors, and it will also help in parsing rest of the stream input stream, whether it is syntactically correct or incorrect. Right.
fine, sir. Understood. Thank you.
Fine. Any other question, guys?